You're walking alone at night. No footsteps behind you, no sound at all. And yet, the hair on the back of your neck rises. Every instinct in your body whispers the same warning. Something is watching you. It's a feeling almost everyone has experienced. Psychologists call it the sensed presence, the uncanny impression that someone is nearby even when you're completely alone. But long before science gave it a name, our ancestors already had an explanation. And it wasn't always comforting. Some believed the gods were silently counting their sins from the sky. Others believed their own eyes could project invisible power into the world, touching anyone they looked at. And in the darkest forests of prehistory, entire communities built rituals around one terrifying question. What is standing behind me? Here's the strange part. Modern neuroscience has identified key brain systems that help create this feeling. And while our ancestors misunderstood what caused it, they weren't responding to nothing. They were reacting to one of the oldest survival mechanisms ever built into the human brain. So why did evolution give us a mind that sometimes senses invisible watchers? What did early humans believe was hiding in the darkness? And why, in a world filled with cameras, satellites, and algorithms, does that same ancient alarm still go off today? To answer those questions, we have to travel back to a time before religion, before cities, before writing itself. Back to the moment this remarkable survival instinct was born. Long before modern humans walked the earth, evolution quietly wrote one rule deep into the primate brain. Eyes matter more than movement, more than color, more than almost anything else in your surroundings. Your brain contains specialized networks that detect where other creatures are looking with incredible speed. Even the simple arrangement of two dark circles above a line can instantly resemble a face staring back at you. This isn't imagination. It's survival. For millions of years, a predator's gaze often meant only one thing. It had already noticed you. On the African savanna, hesitation could be fatal. If you ignored a hungry lion that was actually watching you, there might never be another chance to react. But if you mistakenly thought a shadow was watching, you lost nothing except a moment of caution. Evolution faced a simple choice: miss one real threat, or falsely detect 100 harmless ones. The safer strategy was obvious, so natural selection built a brain that would rather overreact than underreact. In other words, it's far cheaper to be frightened by nothing than to ignore something that could kill you. That ancient calculation still shapes your mind today. And humans aren't unique. Gazelles become noticeably more alert when they sense a predator staring directly at them. Monkeys react differently to direct eye contact than to a sideways glance. Even many birds recognize the danger of an unbroken gaze. Across countless species, being watched triggers powerful stress responses. The instinct is ancient, and we inherited it almost unchanged. But here's where things become even stranger. The same system that once protected our ancestors can sometimes create experiences that feel almost supernatural. Mountaineers climbing the highest peaks on Earth have reported an overwhelming sensation that an unseen companion is walking beside them. Solo sailors crossing vast oceans have described someone silently standing just outside their field of vision. Polar explorers isolated for weeks in endless snow have told nearly identical stories. Scientists often refer to this as the third man factor. It tends to appear during extreme exhaustion, isolation, sensory deprivation, or life-threatening situations. When the brain receives very little reliable information from the outside world, its threat detection systems can become unusually sensitive. Instead of risking the possibility of missing another person nearby, the brain may briefly create the powerful impression that someone is there. Not because ghosts suddenly appeared, but because evolution designed the system to favor false alarms over missed dangers. The same instinct that once helped our ancestors survive predators can, under extraordinary conditions, generate the eerie feeling that another presence is close by. The mountain isn't haunted. The forest isn't necessarily haunted. Your brain is simply doing what it has practiced for millions of years, searching for watchers, even when none exist. But early humans possessed something their predators never developed. They could imagine. They could tell stories. They could give invisible ideas a name. And the moment symbolic thought emerged, something extraordinary happened. The feeling that something is nearby slowly transformed into something far more personal. Someone is watching me. That single shift changed human history. because once the watcher had a face, it could become a god, a spirit, an ancestor, or something far darker. And remarkably, civilizations separated by thousands of miles would all begin inventing strikingly similar watchers. Not because they copied one another, but because they were all trying to explain the very same feeling. If evolution gave humans the instinct to feel watched, culture gave that feeling a face. Across the ancient world, people reached remarkably similar conclusions. If you could sense an unseen presence, then perhaps someone really was there. Watching, waiting, judging. One of the earliest civilizations to leave written records of this fear was ancient Mesopotamia. Life there was unpredictable. Floods destroyed crops, diseases appeared without warning. Children sometimes died for reasons no one could explain. To people living thousands of years ago, random misfortune rarely felt random. There had to be a cause, and often that cause was believed to be an unseen supernatural presence. Among the beings feared in Mesopotamian tradition was Lamashtu, a dangerous figure associated with illness, nightmares, and harm to mothers and infants. Ancient people believed protective rituals and amulets could help keep such dangers away. Whether or not anyone literally expected to see Lamashtu lurking in the shadows, the belief gave shape to fears that otherwise had no clear explanation. Further west, in ancient Egypt, the same anxiety took on a completely different form. Instead of focusing only on dangerous watchers, the Egyptians imagined protective ones. The Eye of Horus, also known as the Wedjat Eye, began with a story of loss. According to Egyptian mythology, Horus lost one of his eyes during a violent struggle with Seth. The damaged eye was later restored. Over time, that restored eye became one of the most recognizable symbols of protection in the ancient world. It appeared on jewelry, on temple walls, on coffins, even on ships traveling across dangerous waters. To the Egyptians, the eye didn't simply see danger, it stood guard against it. Notice what's happening here. Both civilizations experienced the same deeply human feeling, the sense that unseen forces could influence their lives. But they responded in opposite ways. One imagined something to fear, the other imagined something to trust. Psychologically, both solutions accomplished the same goal. A formless fear is almost impossible to control. But once fear has a name, a face, a story, people can respond to it. They can pray, perform rituals, carry protective symbols, or follow moral rules they believe will keep them safe. The mystery becomes manageable. And this pattern appears again and again throughout history. Protective eye symbols emerged across many cultures surrounding the Mediterranean and the Near East. Although these societies influenced one another to different degrees, the repeated appearance of watchful eyes suggests they were responding to a widespread human concern. What if someone, or something, can always see us? But another question slowly emerged. If powerful gods were watching humanity from above, why did so many people also believe that ordinary human eyes possessed extraordinary power? Could the danger come, not only from the heavens, but from the person standing directly in front of you? That question would lead ancient philosophers to develop one of the most fascinating and surprisingly influential theories in the history of science. The ancient world had already imagined gods watching from above, but some thinkers began asking a very different question. What if the power wasn't only in the heavens? What if it was inside our own eyes? Today we know vision works because light enters the eye, where the brain processes the information. But for much of ancient history, that explanation didn't exist. Instead, many Greek philosophers proposed something completely different. They believed vision happened because the eye sent something outward. Not light entering, but sight leaving. This idea became known as extramission. According to different versions of the theory, the eye projected rays, fire, or an invisible visual force that reached out and made contact with the world. To us, that sounds strange, but to the people living at the time, it seemed surprisingly reasonable. After all, when someone stares directly at you, it doesn't just feel like they're looking. It can feel as though their gaze actually reaches you. That everyday experience made the theory convincing. One of the most influential supporters of this idea was Plato, who described vision as a kind of gentle fire flowing outward from the eye and joining with daylight. Later, the mathematician Euclid treated sight almost like geometry itself. He imagined straight visual rays extending outward from the eye, using them to explain perspective, distance, and why objects appear the way they do. Even the physician Galen, whose medical writings influenced scholars for centuries, worked within versions of this broader tradition. Today we know these theories were incorrect, but for the ancient world, they represented serious attempts to understand one of humanity's greatest mysteries. And that's what makes them so fascinating. They weren't creating fantasy. They were trying to explain a feeling that seemed undeniably real. Remember the sensation we began with? That strange certainty that someone is watching you. If a stare feels powerful, if it feels as though it reaches across space, then it's not hard to imagine why people concluded that eyes must be sending something outward. One powerful sensation led to an entire way of thinking about vision. And once people accepted that idea, another conclusion followed almost naturally. If eyes can project invisible force, then perhaps they can also project harm. That belief spread across cultures in different forms. Over time, it became one of history's most enduring superstitions, the evil eye. Across the Mediterranean, the Middle East, and neighboring regions, many people believed that intense envy, hatred, or jealousy could be carried through a person's gaze. A single look, given with enough resentment, could bring sickness, bad luck, or misfortune. Whether anyone truly possessed such power wasn't the point. The belief itself shaped daily life. Parents protected newborn children with charms. Families displayed protective symbols in their homes. Travelers carried amulets believed to deflect harmful attention. Among the most recognizable were the familiar blue eye-shaped talismans that are still sold and worn in many parts of the world today. It's remarkable when you think about it. A survival instinct that evolved to detect predators, helped inspire philosophical theories. Those theories influenced cultural beliefs, and those beliefs eventually became traditions that survived for thousands of years. But not every invisible watcher lived in temples, or stared through human eyes. Far from the cities of Greece and the kingdoms of Egypt, dense forests covered much of northern Europe. And according to the people who lived there, the things watching from the trees weren't always gods. Sometimes, they were something much older. By now, humanity had imagined invisible watchers in many different forms. Gods watched from the heavens. Eyes were believed to project unseen power, protective symbols guarded against dangerous gazes. But beyond the cities, far from temples and philosophers, there was another kind of watcher waiting, one that lived in the wilderness. Across northern Europe, endless forests stretched for hundreds of miles. To the people who entered them, these places felt alive. The trees blocked the sunlight. Mist drifted silently between the trunks. Every snapping branch could signal an animal, or something else. It was the perfect place for an ancient survival instinct to come alive. Among the Norse, stories told of the Fylgja, a spiritual companion believed to be closely connected to a person's life and fate. In different stories, it could appear in dreams, visions, or symbolic forms, quietly accompanying a person throughout their life. Meanwhile, Celtic traditions spoke of landscapes where the ordinary world seemed to brush against something beyond it. Ancient burial mounds, dense forests, lonely crossroads, deep marshes. These places later became known as thin places, locations where the boundary between the ordinary and the supernatural was believed to feel unusually close. Whether people interpreted these places spiritually or simply found them unsettling, they shared something interesting. Many of them naturally limit your senses. Heavy fog reduces visibility, dense forests hide movement, echoes distort sound, isolation removes familiar landmarks. Modern psychology suggests these are exactly the kinds of environments that make the brain work harder to detect possible threats. When information becomes uncertain, the mind often fills in the gaps. A shadow becomes a figure. A distant sound becomes footsteps. An unexplained feeling becomes a presence. Once again, the oldest survival system in the human brain begins searching for a watcher. But these beliefs weren't only about fear. They also helped hold communities together. Imagine living thousands of years ago. No police, no security cameras, no courts investigating every crime. How do you discourage someone from stealing, breaking an oath, or betraying their neighbors when nobody else is around? One powerful answer appears again and again throughout history. Someone is always watching. Across many ancient cultures, ancestors, spirits, or unseen beings were believed to witness human actions, even those committed in complete privacy. Whether those beings truly existed wasn't the important part. The belief itself influenced behavior. If people thought their actions were never completely hidden, they often behaved differently. It's a simple idea, but an incredibly powerful one. And what's remarkable is how often versions of it appeared independently across the world. different cultures, different languages, different religions. Yet many arrived at the same conclusion. Human beings rarely like the feeling of being alone with uncertainty, so they gave uncertainty a face, a guardian, an ancestor, a spirit, something that explained the strange sensation of being watched when no one else was there. By now, we've met many invisible watchers. A Mesopotamian spirit, an Egyptian symbol of protection, Greek theories about powerful eyes, Norse companions, Celtic landscapes filled with unseen presences. They seem completely different, but beneath every story, the same question has been quietly following us from the very beginning. What was actually happening inside the human brain? Why did so many civilizations, separated by oceans, languages, and centuries, arrive at such similar ideas? The answer doesn't begin in mythology. It begins in neuroscience. And once scientists started looking inside the brain itself, the ancient mystery became even more fascinating. After thousands of years of myths, rituals, and stories, the answer was never hiding in a temple, or a forest, or a haunted mountain. It was hiding inside the human brain. Today, advances in neuroscience have helped researchers understand why the feeling of an unseen presence can seem so convincing. One important region is the superior temporal sulcus, an area involved in tracking faces, body movements, and where other people are looking. Working alongside it is the amygdala, one of the brain's key threat detection centers. Together, these systems constantly scan your surroundings, asking a question you rarely notice consciously. Is someone paying attention to me? Most of the time they answer correctly. But under certain conditions, extreme exhaustion, isolation, darkness, stress, or very limited sensory information, these systems can become unusually sensitive. Instead of waiting for clear evidence, the brain may lean toward caution, and sometimes that caution is experienced as the unmistakable feeling that another person is nearby. Researchers believe this helps explain why mountaineers, sailors, polar explorers, and people in other extreme environments have reported remarkably similar experiences across different cultures and generations. The brain isn't trying to frighten you. It's trying to protect you. And sometimes, its oldest survival software becomes a little too cautious. Suddenly, thousands of years of history begin fitting together. The unseen figure in a Celtic forest, the protective eye painted on an Egyptian boat, the Mesopotamian fear of unseen spirits, the evil eye that crossed continents. Different stories, different symbols, different cultures, yet all attempting to explain one deeply human experience. Each civilization interpreted the sensation through the knowledge it had available. They weren't describing neuroscience, they were describing what the experience felt like. And for thousands of years, that was the best explanation anyone had. But perhaps the strangest part of this story isn't found in the past. It's happening right now. Our ancestors imagined invisible watchers because they couldn't see who or what might be observing them. Today, many of those watchers are real. Security cameras quietly record busy streets. Phones constantly exchange information with digital networks. Online services analyze what we search for, what we watch, how long we pause, even what we might want next. The ancient feeling of being watched hasn't disappeared. It has simply found new surroundings. The difference is that ancient watchers were usually imagined as moral beings, gods, ancestors, protective spirits. People believed they cared about honesty, loyalty, and right or wrong. Modern systems don't make moral judgments. They process information, recognize patterns, predict behavior. They aren't deciding whether you're a good person. They're trying to understand what you'll do next. In some ways, that makes today's invisible watchers feel even more unsettling. Because unlike the spirits of ancient stories, these ones actually exist. So, what did early humans really see in the darkness? Perhaps nothing at all. No hidden gods, no lurking spirits, no supernatural eyes waiting beyond the trees. What they experienced was something far more remarkable, a brain shaped by millions of years of evolution, constantly preparing for dangers that might never appear. That instinct helped our ancestors survive predators. Later, it inspired myths, religions, symbols, folklore, an entire civilization searching for meaning in a feeling they couldn't fully explain. The Watcher was never really outside. It was always part of us, still active, still alert, still protecting us. The next time you're alone, and that strange feeling quietly creeps over your shoulder, don't ask, "Who is watching me?" Instead, ask yourself, what ancient survival instinct just woke up? Because long before humans built cities, wrote books, or looked up at the stars, your brain had already learned one unforgettable lesson. If it feels like someone is watching, pay attention. For most of human history, that instinct was one of the reasons our ancestors lived long enough for us to be here today.